reality in our lives? And if so, how does it affect or how does it change us? And how can we know a God reality? And I ask these questions because the Apostle Paul, in addressing his responsibility and his reality of what God had given him to do, we find this example in Ephesians chapter 3. And while the focus at the camp was on how wide and how deep is the love of God, we begin actually a little before that because the Apostle Paul is talking about his responsibility. And I think it is a responsibility that we can look at his reality and his reality in Christ. So here Paul says, I became a servant. This is Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 7. I became a servant of this gospel by the gift of God's grace given me through the working of his power. So Paul's reality is in Christ, God, and his eternal purpose is what we're going to see. And Paul recognizes that his reality is that he's a minister, it is a gift from God, and it is by the grace of God. That's how he sees his reality in the moment, and that he's working in his power. Although I am less than and the least of all of God's people, this grace was given to me to preach to the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ. Now, and you and I may have this reality from time to time as Paul had this reality, and this might become an argument between you and Paul. And you say to Paul, well, wait a minute, Paul, how can you say that you are the least of all the saints? Man, I am really down and low. I am nobody. God doesn't care for me at all. I've done all of these things. And Paul is saying, no, I'm the least of all. And we try to out-humble each other. I mean, that happens. That can be our reality sometimes. We work so hard to become humble that we're proud of our humility. And it becomes a little bit of an issue. But Paul is saying in his present reality, he's less than all the saints. Bar none, he is less. Now I'm going to suggest as we look through here that there are probably other examples of individuals who in their reality, in their moment in time, are thinking, no, Paul, you take a back seat to this situation. So he says, it is my job to preach about the unsearchable riches of Christ. And that's what I want to do in this on the reality rules, is to preach about the unsearchable riches of Christ. They're beyond our capacity to fully understand them. I'm amazed, and this thought occurred to me this past week. I have a relative who can remember everybody's birthday, everybody's name in the family and all that. And I'm thinking, how in the world do they do that? However, they have some mental challenges. There are other people who, for example, can give you all the numbers in pi r squared. And they can just go back and back and back. And there are other people who can look at a formula on a blackboard and they have a photographic memory and remember everything. And then I think you and I have experienced, at least I have, and I'm assuming that you may have had dreams in your life. And for me, for example, I might be going back to high school. And what is interesting, I can see people in my dream, and everything about them is real. I can see their face, exact representation of who they are, and know who they are. Now, could I take a pencil today, or a pen, or a marker, and draw them? No way. I couldn't even begin to do that. But in my mind's eye, my brain is capable, in that moment, of seeing them exactly. And if I could just describe them, I know exactly who they are. I say that because of the capabilities of the human mind. At the same time, none of us have all of those capabilities. None of us can remember everybody's name. Do this, do that, but the mind is capable of incredible things. Now, the eye is capable of seeing a certain amount. The ear is capable of hearing a certain amount. But I'm going to suggest that there's more to it than all of that. There are things that are beyond all of that. We are able in our humanity to have a sensation and an expression of love. But I'm saying that we have limitations in our life and we don't fully understand it. So he says, so I want to talk about the unsearchable riches of Christ in this regard. And then he goes on in verse 9 to say, to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery. Now, this is where it begins to get interesting when we think about the realities. And see, the essence and the focus of the summer camp was that we are in the grip of God's grace. So, Paul says, we have this mystery. He's telling us here in verse 9, and to make plain to everyone the administration of this mystery, which in past ages was kept hidden in God, who created all things. So in this thought, and it says from the beginning of the world, I want to ask ourselves a question, which this is about changing our realities. The question is, to us, I know we're working within the Old and the New Covenant, but the question is, when did God become gracious? When did that begin? When did God first start being gracious to you and me? Oh, by the way, when did God, the reality, when did God start loving? That's the question. Did he only start loving humanity when he sent his Son? When did he begin all of these things? Because we tend to think, and I want to probably spend a little more time on this next week, well, it's kind of like if I go outside the house as a kid, I'm outside my parents' rule. Is that true? Can I escape God? So if, let's say I go 1,000 miles off, and this is where people sin comes so easy in our life. We think we get far away enough from God. And it's kind of like the theme that Vegas has. What you do in Vegas stays in Vegas, and nobody knows. Oh, come on. Let's get real. Vegas is just a part of this country. Oh, so, well, let's see. I can get away from God. I can get far away. He doesn't have any influence on my life. He doesn't know what I'm doing. I'll go to Rome. Oh, well, maybe I'll go to the moon. I'll go to Jupiter. I'll go to the ends of the galaxy. Have you gotten away from God? Oh, by the way, when you get outside of those things and the like, or move far enough away, is the grace of God gone? When God ushered out Adam and Eve out of the garden, was he being ungracious? When God doesn't give us everything that we want at the time in which we want it and the way in which we want it, is God unloving and ungracious? So the question really is, when did grace begin? And by the way, is it new with God? This is something new. Oh, I think I'll try this way out. I'll try to be great. Is it new? Paul's talking about a reality that is hidden in God, a reality that is unseen, unknown, but real. And how real? God real.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life, or need spiritual advice? The Worldwide Church of God is located in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto, California. We welcome everyone to attend our worship services with us every week at the times listed on your screen.